Stuck.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Kirti, Assistant Professor, Chanakya National Law University, and we are discussing the various units of the course titled as Organizational Theory and Design. The code of this course is MMP at 001, and we have discussed till now the first to sixth unit, and today we will be discussing Unit 7, which is titled as Contemporary Organizational Designs. Objective of this particular unit is the environmental factors influencing changing organizational designs, choosing an organizational design. What are the various contemporary organizational designs could be? Then the entire unit is divided into 3 to 4 sections, and the section layout is first we will be reading out with the introduction and background of the entire unit. Then, what are the factors that influence an organization's design? How can we choose an appropriate organizational design? And how Porter's competitive five forces model help us to analyze what kind of organizational design we should have? Then, what are the issues being faced due to emerging contingent workforce and other major organizational design challenges will be discussed in this particular unit. So, starting with the background, the faster pace of the technological advancement has led organizations to evolve with changing job roles and structures. So the traditional organizational models need transformation since there is a considerable change in the workforce, which is very competitive nowadays, and the work environment is so complex, and the way organizations operate today is somewhat very different from that of a organization a few decades back. So agility here plays a significant factor in forcing the organization to have a better organizational design. Instead of placing the important decision making channels at the top, there will be team networks that will act as per the need of the business. Then more emphasis has been laid on that how engagement, employee engagement could be practiced, and including the workforce in the decision making processes is also a focus of these contingent organizational models. Then we see that in today's world, the major challenge of the firm is the same as that of the consultancy firms. And this is why they are facing unpredictable demands from the market. Now, change in any environmental factor is constant. They pose threat and opportunity, and therefore organizations require speed and flexibility more than the fixed defined structure in which were there in the traditional structures. Now, the organizations are facing unpredictable demand and changing factors which need to focus on intellectual resources and thus rely on free, fluid, and contemporary organizational designs. In other way, we can see that to accelerate at the great pace towards different models of decision making, the organizations today need to be at the focal point of what the transformation is all about. So, what are the factors that influence the change or the shift in organizational designs? The first one here is the inclusivity of employees and their voices. So, the workplace satisfaction and contentment directly affect the productivity of the employees in any organization. So, the organizational design should be regarding in learning and employees and leveraging the sources simultaneously. Remote working culture adapting the telecommuting and contingent workforce remains as an essential part of the organization nowadays. So, employees should be united in a holistic approach and strive towards a shared experience, even though the work culture has been such a complex one over the past few decades. So, the HR and IT of any organization can help in leveraging and facilitating the organization design at the workplace, which can be a contemporary one in nature. Then another factor which influences the organizational design and forces it to have a contingent approach rather than being a traditional one is the changing workplace dynamics. The workplace can be viewed as an entity that can be modified when needed. Talking about business environment, we have dealt internal environment again and again. And when it comes to internal environment, one of the basic factors or one of the basic characteristics is that it can be molded, it can be changed, it can be manipulated at any point of time as per the requirement of the internal management team and due to the various challenges that external environment poses for the internal environment. So changing workplace dynamic is another factor which influences the organizational design. Here we see that it's given that during first 21st century, workplaces must constantly adjust the age-old principles and instead focus on fostering employee with collectivity and collaboration and give them a space to explore their creativity. So the new organizational should design should not bring about any resistance, but the focus should be on challenging the assumptions and meeting the organization's need as and when they arise. The workplace is seen as a pivotal facilitator to accelerate the workforce to better productivity. Now, another factor which influences the changing organizational design is the role of organization's environment. Whenever there is a change, whether it was related to changing workplace dynamics or inclusivity of employee and their voices, it is all based upon the change in the organization's environment and world becoming a global village. So, in a nutshell, organizations operate in an infinite environment that we have discussed. That organizations are today very much complex and they are an open system. So, environment and it contains everything that is located outside the purview of organizational entity itself. So, all the element and all the factors or variables that work outside the organization's boundary can influence the forms of environment. Forms of environment here means that the internal environment as well as the external environment. So, every factor or variable that is operating within these different layers of the environment have an impact on the organization and how it works. So environment consists of several divisions that contain similar ingredients. The sector include industry, inputs, raw materials, human and finance resources, technology, government and international factors. So these are sector specific or micro level external business environment factors. Choosing the appropriate organizational design. How can we make the decision of taking an organizational structure or designing it? So, to sustain in a competitive environment and keep in line with the organization's mission, vision, and goals, the managers must constantly keep in touch with the outside forces. That is the variables of outside the organizational environments, external environmental factors. So, different models talk about various frameworks that can guide the organization's design and shape it. So, one of the major studies or theories on which we can base our organizational design is Porter's competitive five forces and strategy model. So, five forces exist in any industry as per Michael Porter, and the manager should formulate strategy based upon these factors. So, the first factor is the threat of new entrants, then we have power of the supplier, power of the buyers, and then threat of substitutes and rivalry among existing competitors. So let's study them all one by one. Okay, so the existing organization needs to watch for each step they undertake, especially when there is a possibility of any new player in the market. So threat of new entrants as a major force which drives the overall organization's design. So the decisions about increasing the price or investment need to be thought through when there is a threat of new entrant. Like Nike, for instance, started pushing their Spark trainer, category to revamp when there was a threat of Under Armour getting into the business of athlete footwear. So, another factor in this Potter's five forces model is the power of supply. So, if the supply of raw material is in the hand of only a few selected firms, then automatically these firms, those suppliers, get easier to retain control in their hands. So, if the authority gets abused, it can charge higher prices and limit the quantity because they are few in numbers. Okay, then the power of buyers. The opposite side of the spectrum leads to cutting down the prices and increased quality if the buyer are large in number and we have to target a larger segment of the market. So the power of buyer is also one of the force. Like the power of Walmart can easily be a concern for the manufacturer who put their goods for sale. Now, three threat of the substitute. Examples have been pointed out towards how telephone services companies have suffered as when there is an introduction of inexpensive internet services like Reliance Jio and Airtel and other telecommunication companies have seen this kind of issues in their sector when Reliance Jio came with the inexpensive telecommunication services along with internet services. Other were challenged to come up with such plans so that to match or capture large share of the market, which also led to the controversy later and competitive uh, malfunction or malpractices were there on the part of Geo. Then rivalry among existing competitors. The rivalry is fiercely living in how the advertising industry works. A famous example is that of Coke and Pepsi when Coke had Beijing Olympics as its sponsor. Many Chinese buyers thought it was an official sponsor for Pepsi. All this after a creative marketing gimmick by Pepsi, Potter thus suggests that an organization can either focus on differentiation or cost strategy. So yesterday in the class we talked about various strategy like low cost and differentiation and focused marketing strategy given by Potter. So bifurcation on cost and focused and differentiation strategy was another way to define the organization structure. Then organizational diagnosis issues and concepts. What are the various issues when it comes to diagnosing organizations and then coming up with the new organizational design? So, organizational leaders often misdiagnose the problem relating to the organizational failed strategies. Then, the emphasis is usually placed on the why of the problem instead of digging out of the roots. Most of the time, the error crops up due to the faulty organizational design that takes time to appear on the surface. So, the main organizational design issues include issues like competing priorities due to poor governance. In the case of a matrix organization where a subordinate reports to two superiors, two supervisors, the focus should remain on fixing how the departmental goal and priorities fit with the company's large purposes and goals. So the problem occur when, for instance, the organization design is tailored for a vertically structured functional organization. and gets applied to the matrix organization. So, in a bureaucratic setup, the best organization design is where the functional head leads each individual, then VP, then the VP, and the COO. Now, in a matrix organization, the emphasis should be that each reports to two superiors. Therefore, a decision making body seems vital to check the conflicting priorities and unaddressed conflicts relying there. The functional segments need to be empowered enough to manage the contrasting demands. Now, unwanted turnover due to lousy role design is another issue faced when it comes to organizational diagnosis. Incentives such as stock options and titles are often molded to make the employee stay in the organization. For example, here Mr. X has a toxic boss, and even though he wants to leave the organization, he often is stopped by hefty bonuses. For the initial tenure, he worked, and this worked, but slowly 60% of the employees faced similar concerns. And finally, organization resorted to reorganization. So it had to restructure itself. So despite all the possible efforts, increasing turnover was persistent. This pointed towards realizing that the problem was in fact the way organizational design was developed. So temporary incentives and changes in organization did not result in the resolution of this issue, that is the high rate of turnover. So the employees got bored of the management style. So the problem was there with the toxic management style of the boss and not with the overall organizational design. So diagnosis here was a quiet being failed. So quality jobs were the need of the hour, coupled with an adequate design strategy and appropriate management style. So the appointment of any employee should be based on the number of competencies and critical skills to deliver a set of defined metric indices. Not inaccessible bosses due to excessive span of control. We have discussed span of control in our first unit and second unit in the Henry Fayol 14 Principles of Management. So, span of control defines that how many subordinates are going to be there for one particular supervisor. Okay, so a manager has around 12 to 14 direct subordinates. To effectively manage employees, there is a need to give feedback so that the prioritizing task can happen constantly. So each and every employee is getting feedback from their manager, from their supervisor, and there are only 12 to 14 direct subordinates of that particular manager. So in an organization where it involves with complex work tasks such as drug trials, and superiors must have a narrow span of control. On the other hand, manufacturing unit can have seniors who have a wide span of control where there's less requirement of supervision and direct orders and directions being given. So therefore, managers' accessibility is important factor, and it is often overlooked when it comes to designing an organization. So when it comes to organizational diagnosis, this issue has been a prominent one. Then there is another issue which happens or which is being found out when it whenever there is an organizational diagnosis of the overall design, which is cross-functional rivalry due to misaligned incentives. When departments have conflicting priorities, ensuring that every organization works toward a shared vision and goals becomes challenging. So the metrics that are not correctly aligned within these cross-functional or departments aligned can result in contrasting results, thus disrupting the entire organization. For example, in an organization, there is Mr. X who is bound to increase his department's revenue and on the other hand reduces the head count. So these two are competing loop that have to be achieved simultaneously. So there are seasonal occupation and contractual work, both of which employ individuals for a particular time based on the nature of the services. The employees are generally a part of temporary work arrangement, often freelancing and consultancy work. Famous examples range from wedding photographers to fashion influencer, and therefore, due to the nature of services and the time of employment, a specific set of organizational issues pose certain challenges. So, the main challenge is identifying and classifying who constitutes an independent contractor. Like in an university, you can see a contractor handling all the uh, functions of the security, and there could be many staff involved in the security function of the university. So the contractor will be leading the entire security team, and they will be hiring or firing or taking decisions for them and not the university. So there might be processes for recruiting individual, then establishing objectives and monitoring the set employment procedures. So all the processes involved in maintaining employee relations and engagement may differ from standard methods, and in such a way the issues related here with the Mr. X who has this contracting results, who has this contracting objectives in the organization, can be resolved with this type of method. So organizational issues that come up due to the contingent workforce are these. Another major organizational design challenge is to ensure that employees stay connected. So, the rise of the technology and the way the hybrid mode has been developed nowadays, depending upon the technology and the way organizations are dealing with their employees due to the various constraints, which was that pandemic and the workspace constraint, the financial constraints. So, the rise of technology has fostered the employee to stay connected despite the geographical challenge that they have to work in the remote locations and not in the office or branch or the headquarters. So, handheld devices and calendars make the employees' work easier by being in constant touch with their node or with their offices. So, the corporate database can be easily be logged in. The use of networks and video conferencing has helped in various ways for telecommuting and flexible work arrangement. Then another challenge is to manage global structural issues. So organizations have no boundaries like boundaryless organizations and hybrid organization are contemporary organizational design which are very famous these days and have been developed over this past decade. And to manage the global structure is again an issue. So, organizational design varies concerning culture and geographies, and less advanced countries may witness formal structure that focus on hierarchies. So, economically developed countries have higher skills sets and education in employees. Therefore, a flexible, empowering, and design can help employees to facilitate the organizational goals and objectives and achieving them effectively. Now, contemporary organization designs. Organizations aim to innovate and adapt to pace up with the challenges in an unpredictable world and fast moving global market. That we have understood with the help of changes in business environment and how there are so many issues with the traditional design which they have faced, and there is a paradigm shift between contemporary design to the uh, traditional design to contemporary organizational design. So organization therefore the contemporary organizational designs with decentralizing authority and moving towards more networked and empowered team to work towards better communication and coordination is the utmost important goal of today's organizational designs. So, certain principles that govern how the contemporary forms of organizational design work are such, like state of hierarchical setup of a supervisor and subordinate relationship. The new forms of organization must focus on customer centric and product specific teams. So this is the new ideology behind the contemporary organizational forms. So therefore allowing some room for expert on a domain specific manager. Then the traditional structure lacks empowerment and only focuses on the level of authority, whereas the contemporary organizational designs require time bound goals with apparent empowerment to accomplish goals related to overall strategy in place. Then establish a communication and operation centers where all the information relating to different project is stored, like project organizations. They are attached to a parent organization and they have a particular organized project organization which is meant for a particular project like a dam. Okay, so it can act as a model between other teams and functional activities. Then they are providing enough flexibility to cater to employee needs and concern. And often office spaces help in providing a collaborative space to engage in ideas. Then senior management to extensively focus on vision and planning rather than caught up in the lower level of decision making process. So contemporary organizational designs are given a new perspective on how organizations can work and try to achieve a successful position in the market, which is a global market. So that was the end of Unit 7, and here we are starting with the Unit 8, which concerns with approaches to job design. So by the end of this unit, we'll be able to understand the concept of job and career and occupation, how these three are different. Then what is the purpose behind having a job design? Different factors which influence the effective job design, and then traditional approach to contemporary approach, then how these jobs can be designed and design a suitable job, impact of advanced technology on job design, then various impediments faced by an organization while designing and implementing a new fangled job design. So these are the various objectives of this particular unit. And coming with the section structure of this unit is that we'll be discussing the background of what job design is and why is it relevant. Then what is the basic definition of job occupation and career? How can we define job design and objective behind the job design? Then what are the factors which are going to affect it, and various approaches to design a job. So the structure, starting with the introduction, we see that the structure of an organization is characterized by the task and authority relationships basically. So the jobs are the foundation of the task authority structure. So it is pertinent to understand what job actually means and how can we design it. So job design process lays emphasis on the design or redesign of the job to incorporate factors which lead to the achievement of both and organizational objectives. And designing of the job particularly focuses on reduction of wastage. Okay, and wastage of resources means wastage of minimization of wastage of time, resources, human effort. So job design is very important. Here we see ineffectually designed job often bring about what happens when the jobs are not designed in an effective way and people do not understand how they have to perform the job. So there will be boredom out of the job if their design is not appropriate or effective. then constantly increasing turnover. People will leave the organization when they think that their effort is being not recognized, and they have to put their effort in such a way that it is getting wasted. Then reduce motivation. If I know that there is no recognition of my effort and my job is not apt as per my job position, and I have to perform the tasks and duties which are not that relevant, and I have to waste my time and my uh, emotion and my efforts, then my motivational level will never be high. Then, low level of job satisfaction. We have discussed in human resource development that job satisfaction is a workplace attitude which is very much important for the organization and the employee. So, if the job design is not effective one, and I do not know how to perform my tasks and duties and what I have to do and what I don't have to do, then my job satisfaction will always be lower, which can be detrimental to the overall organizational climate's health. Then diminished productivity. My productivity will eventually decrease if there is lack of appropriation in the job design. And as I have already mentioned in the last slide, that yes, maximization of wastage will increase the organizational cost on it can only be curbed with the help of a proper and effective job design. So many of these negative consequences could be avoided or minimized through effective job design or proper detection of major job components. What are the basic activities that could be done? Minimum effort and maximum result could be achieved. One second. So here we come to the another section, which is the meaning of job, occupation, and career. So occupation provides a person his identity. It talks about great deal one's social position is. So idea of occupation also implies a set of social relationships. For instance, as if I'm Dr. Kirti and I'm a professor, it implies that students, other professors, and publishers representatives are the part of the set of social network that I have. So finally, occupations are by and large linked to the work of adults and their social network and relationships. So if a professor is there, his occupation is teaching and being a professor, professorship. So the work carried out by a teenager is not often considered as an occupation because it does not frame a major part of their identity as an individual. So when I was a teenager and a student, and if I was giving a coaching or mentorship or giving home tuition to the students of my locality, I was not, I was still a student and not called as a teacher. I wouldn't have been called a teacher because that was not my occupation, and it was just an activity carried out on the basis of my hobby. So it does not had the frame or it framed a major part of my identity as an individual. But now, if I'm in this profession, so my occupation is being a professor, and I have a network in which there are students, there are universities, and there are set of publishers and other professors. So the meaning of job, occupation, and career moving forward, taking into account of all these consideration, occupation is defined as the role, social role performed by adult member of the society that directly or indirectly yields social and financial consequences, and that constitutes a major part of an adult life. So the job, a person's occupation at one point in time. So if I'm a professor, my job is to teach. My job is to write and do the research. So a career is unfolding sequences of job that a person has over the life course. So I have a career in teaching. So this is how we differentiate between occupation, job, and career. Now, if we have talked about job, now it comes to understand what job design actually means. Though we have understood why it is important to recognize why job and design is important. If not understood or planned effectively, then it could lead to low morale, low motivation, high rate of turnover, uh, lesser motivated employee, lesser job satisfaction within the employees, no quality work life. So it is pertinent to understand what job design actually means. So it is the way the tasks are combined to form a complete job, and building the specification of the possession, contents, that is job content, method to be used, tools to be used, relationship of the job so as to meet with the various technological and organizational requirements as well as meet the personal need of the job holders. Now, job design can be any set of activity that involve the alteration of specific job or independent system of jobs with the intent of improving the quality of any employee's job and experience and their on-the-job productivity. So this is how job design has been defined by Buno. Then, while designing a job, following points are meant to be kept in mind. And what are these? Let's see. So, job redesign is an essential allegiance to quality improvement of the individual and the organization. It must be performed from either the bottom up or top down approach, depending on the hierarchy and responsibility of the position and its relationships within the organization. Job design is a process which integrates work content, which is tasks, function, relationships, the reward, which can be extrinsic reward and intrinsic rewards, and the qualifications required to perform those jobs, which is skill, knowledge, and abilities for each job in a way that meet the needs of the employee and the organization, and the job title which has been assigned. So, role occupant have is aware about all the aspect of that particular job, so job design must be performed in such a way. Then there are three major objectives of job design. What are these? First one is to meet the organizational requirements such as higher productivity, operational efficiency, quality of product, quality of services, high morale, high motivation, good organizational climate, no role ambiguity, less chances of organizational conflict. Then another objective is to satisfy the need of individual employee like interest, like their personal motive and objective. Then the challenging job roles, job design should be such that organizational employees must feel that they are challenged every day and they could explore their creative side and give the job gives them a chance to explore their creativity and innovative side as well. So challenge, achievement of and sense of accomplishment is directly linked to the job they are performing. And then the another purpose of the job design is to integrate the need of individual with the organizational requirement. So here we can understand the objective of a job design from the perspective of the organization, from the perspective of the organizational employees and the various teams performing in that particular organization. So, job design helps the organization at various levels, all these three levels, in a different way. Now, what are the factors which are going to influence the effectiveness of the job design? So, managers or the people who are doing the diagnosis and going for organizational design and then coming to the job design must focus on these factors and keep it into consideration. So the first one is the volume of work. So it will determine by and large the number of jobs and various tasks and duties which which will be there in a particular job role, and the role occupant have to perform all these number of work or volume of work. So it should be such that it is performable, it is doable. Then second factor which should be considered is complexity of work. If the job is to be carried out both in terms of its variety and breadth, then the technical difficulty or depth should be understood, and the design should be such that it is very much comprehensible by the employee or occupant. Okay. Then another one is work processes involved. If I am a role occupant of a professor, or assistant professor, I must be aware about all the work and the process of those work which I have to perform, which I have to implement. So it be designed in such a way that it lays out all the processes related to different work which have been assigned in that particular job role. So might be desirable for one person to be involved in an entire process or the workflows, and may be such that the work processes has to be divided between several different people. Then the nature of people currently employed in the organization also should be considered. The extent to which the job can be redesigned depends largely upon the kind of people employed. If the people are not highly motivated group or highly contented with their work culture, redesigning of the particular job will be a difficult task, and the more difficult task to implement it will be there for the managers. So the people and their nature and psychology, the level of job satisfaction, level of motivation they have, and commitment they have towards the organization must be understood before designing or redesigning a job. Then another factor which influences the effectiveness of job design is the sequence of flows in the processes. The succession of events and their timing affect how work can be organized. Where activities are carried out over a longer period, this is likely to be a cause of greater complexity. So, the timing of a process to be completed should be kept in mind in such a way that it is not that complex and could be understood by the employees or the role applicant. If it is such that it has greater complexities, will lead to frustration on the part of the role occupant or the person handling that job position, whose job has been designed or in such a way that it has greater complexity in its work nature. Another factor which influences the effectiveness of job design is the time scale. Where immediate responses are required, specific job may have to be embarked to provide such responses. Work requiring longer planning horizons is likely to be more complex and need therefore to be done at a higher level. So we cannot give priority a lower level of management and could not give them a wider time span. And if it is such, then it should be that must be kept at the upper hierarchical level. So the hierarchy of the level can be based upon the job design function. So the time scale have to be kept in mind while designing a particular job and designing the overall organizational environment and structure as well. Then there's geographical scattering of organizations' activities. So if the organization is such that it has multiple branches and each branch is conducting a different set of action, then job design must be done in such a way that all these branches are connected together. And if they are scattered, then the job design must cater to the demand of this particular factor of the organization. The involvement, if we have two different branches in the same city, and one branches deal with the loan sanction, and one department or one branch deals with the savings and other type of accounts, then both these two can be interdependent upon each other. So if there is scattering in these branches of the bank, then the employees can be, if they are overburdened with the job, there can be confusions and resistance on the part of the employees. So their job should must be designed in such a way that the loan department employees are not overburdened with getting or selling the accounts which they are not supposed to. So there should be very much a role clarity, and if there are branches and they are geographically scattered, the work should be dependent and not interdependent when it comes to job design of the various employees or role occupants in those particular type of organization. Then the involvement of other parts of the organization in the overall process, there may be a need for extensive communication and coordination, and the design of jobs should be take into account of the way this is to be achieved. The effect of information technology must also be considered while designing a particular job. If it is not done, then it may be difficult to handle day-to-day work and have an effective communication, smooth and collaborative teams. So, with the help of technology, job designs or entire job could be performed in a better way. So, job should be designed keeping in mind what are the effective information technological use through which work and jobs could be done in a more appropriate way and with a less or minimized wastage of resources. So, in this way, what kind of information technology or technological advancement is there in that particular job area, this factor must be considered while designing a job and to make it an effective one. Then approaches to design a particular job. So basically here we can see that there are two different popular job design approach, and first one approach entails fitting people to job. It is based upon the assumption that people can be adapted to the work situation. Thus employee attitude towards the job are ignored and job are designed to produce maximum economic results and technological efficiency. So the first jobs are designed and then people are being screened out and selected on the basis of those particular jobs. So it is one of the approach to design a job. Then this approach uses the principles of scientific management and work simplification. In contrast to second job entails fitting jobs to people. It is based upon the assumption that people are underutilized at the work and they desire more challenges and responsibility. So once the role occupant has already uh, secured the job position and his role, after a certain point of time, his role or his job could be designed or redesigned, and thus giving him such challenges and responsibility with that new job design, which helps him to grow in his career and to gain certain competencies and skills to meet the competency gap which is going to be in the future. So both approaches are very much different in nature, where first is done before the role occupants actually get to perform the job, and here when one has already got the position, has already become a role occupant, then his job is getting designed or redesigned. Now here we see that techniques such as job engagement, enlargement, job enrichment are used while designing job according to the second alternative. So job designing, job enrichment, job enlargement, all these can be done with the help of redesigning of work. Then Job rotation is also one of the basic type of job redesigning when it comes to the second alternative or second approach. Then we see that what are the basic advantages and disadvantages of first approach. So first approach was given by Frederick Winslow Taylor, as we know, was the father of scientific management, and gave importance to in standardization and specialization. So Taylor advocated that vertical job specialization so that the details are being laid out, the procedure and work practices are developed by engineers and in such a way that it enforced by the supervisor and executed by the employee. So it takes the first approach into consideration, or the first approach of job design is based upon this scientific management principle. So, applied horizontal job specialization, such as narrowing the supervisor's role to such a degree that if one person manages operational efficiency and another manages inspection, and there is another manager who is looking after the disciplinary action, or these three different roles are being performed by a single person. That could always also happen. Then the approach here has certain advantages. So the job specialization is the way in which the job could be designed as per the first approach. So it will lead to work efficiency and employees productivity as per the approach. Then what can be the disadvantages of first design approach? Now let's see. So increased work efficiency, but it does not necessarily improve job performances as it ignores the job effect of job content on employees. How can we decide that employees are enjoying their job and doing justice to their everyday operation? And if the job has been designed already, there will be no challenge and no enrichment of the job. So the role occupant may feel stagnant in the position that they're handling. Then another disadvantage is that costs more in terms of high turnover, absenteeism, and health problems. So if I'm told that I have to do, uh, there is only monotony in my work, it will lead to maybe stressed mental health problems and absenteeism at workplace by my side. Then the employees are concerned only with the small part of the process. They know that yes, we have to perform this and this is my duty. I will not do anything apart from this. So it will also lead to uh, problems and issues at the workplace. So they can't be identified with the customer's needs. Then it ignores the motivational potential of the jobs and the employees. Then the other thing is that it does not apply the professional knowledge workers. So this second category of job design has the five most commonly approach of job design. So five different types of or job designing can be there with the help of second approach, second category, which was to design the job afterwards when the role occupant has already got the job position. So here we see that the vertical axis here, there's a vertical aspect and the horizontal aspect, and this vertical axis indicates the impact dimension, which means the degree to which a job design approach is linked to factors beyond the immediate job, such as reward system, performance, organizational structure. As we can see, the impact on the employee is higher, medium, and low at the vertical level or vertical axis, and organizational structure or physical work condition, team composition, norms, as its likely effect on the changes and effectiveness of the quality of the work. Then the complexity dimension is there on the horizontal axis, and there are changes in many factors. Involvement of individual with diverse competencies at various organizational level is there. Then a high level of decision making competencies, successful implementation of work is there. As we can see, if the complexity increases, it is low, then there is job rotation, job engineering, job enlargement, then job enrichment, and then socio-technical systems are there to provide job complexity as well as job enrichment, taking the second approach into consideration while designing a particular job. Then there are various issues faced while designing a particular job, like complexity in measuring the core job characteristics accurately can be a issue and challenge while designing a particular job. Then contemporary knowledge about job design is restricted to focus on the individual jobs, and especially the literature trends to overlook the job design characteristics that apply to team settings. Then another issue that this job design can have is that there can be interventions over and over again and face resistance to change. Employees may feel threatened or over challenged when there is role changing and there is day to day change, or a particular basis there is a change in their job role. So some supervisors don't like job redesigning intervention because they change their roles and may threaten the job security as well. They might see it in a very challenging way that they cannot handle the other position, or they will not be effective on those their competencies will not align with the job demands when their job is redesigned. So they may feel a reluctance or a resistance on their part when there is a change in their job design. So these are the various issues faced by the employees at workplace when their job is redesigned or there is job design in the organizational environment. So, these are the various topics that we have covered today, which is related to job design and various issues faced in organizational structural design or organizational design. So, here we come to the conclusion of our two units, that is 7 and 8. And from tomorrow, we'll be covering our 9th, 10th, and 11th unit, and that will be the last class of organizational theories and design. So thank you so much. Have a great day. This is Dr. Kirti, and that's all for today. Escape करना है